The title is Planned as Promised. We're looking at the crucifixion. Last week we talked about the garden and how Jesus prayed in the garden. And we see the agony that started in his heart in the garden. And we're going to step forward now into the crucifixion of Christ. And I want us to see and focus on how through all that's going to happen throughout the crucifixion, we see that this was all planned. This was all promised. And Revelation 13 verse 8, the end of that verse talks about the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. This Jesus Christ being crucified, you know, this was planned before the earth was even created. This was God's plan for it the whole time. When most of us think about the cross, a lot of times we think about a moment in history. Many people just say, oh yeah, they might even say, oh yeah, Jesus, more of a historical figure. They think of it maybe as a tragic event. A man that was wrongly accused. Maybe a life taken too soon. And though these are all true in one aspect, they aren't true in that this was a tragedy that caught Jesus off guard. That's not what happened here. The cross was not an accident. It was not a reaction that Jesus had. It was not God scrambling to fix what went wrong. It wasn't like God said, oh man messed everything up. I got to figure out a plan here. And I got to figure this out. No, he understood everything. He was already in the future. He's already been in our future. And the cross that Jesus died on was the plan from the very beginning. Before Adam even sinned, before the first drop of blood was ever shed, before there was even a need for redemption, God had already determined what would take place. 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 18 says, "For as much as ye know that ye were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, as of the Lamb without blemish and without spot, who verily was foreordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest in these last times for you." You see, Jesus Christ was foreordained before the foundations of the world to die on the cross for you and me. Jesus was not plan B. It wasn't like God wanted Adam and Eve, they were going to be sinless and everything was going to be great, and then Adam sinned and God said, oh no, we got to figure something else out. No, this was always the plan from the beginning. And so what we're going to look at is not just a story of the crucifixion, it is the unfolding of a divine appointment that God had. Every step, every detail, every moment that happens throughout the crucifixion was God planning it all. This was something that God chose. Acts 2:23 is kind of our key verse for this here. In Acts 2 verse 23 it says, "Him being delivered by the determinate counsel and foreknowledge of God, ye have taken and by wicked hands have crucified and slain." Yes, Jesus was crucified and slain by the wicked hands of sinners. But we got to understand that this was the determinate counsel and foreknowledge of God. Meaning this was God determined, God purposed, that was the counsel part, and the foreknowledge of God. God understanding this is what was going to happen. I think of it as, thinking of this situation, I think of a chess game. I don't know if any of you guys play chess much. Chess is I tell people, there's strategic games out there, and we have fun playing with different games with our kids, but every game has some part of luck in it. Yeah. You're either rolling dice or you're flipping over cards and you're hoping for the right card. Chess is kind of one of the only games that's pure strategy. There's no luck to it. You are making the choices, you're making the moves. And there's a lot to think about when you're thinking of chess. There's a lot of pieces, a lot of moves, a lot going on. And in the master level of chess, things get very intense. Yeah. And there's a lot that goes on. They work very fast, very quick on their moves, but also they're looking ahead. They're not thinking, what is my opponent going to do? No, they're thinking, okay, I know all the possibilities of my opponent, and this is what I will do here. And they're already thinking 5, 10, sometimes 15 steps ahead. Yeah. And many times, some of these matches get down to where one opponent has only the king and maybe 1 or 2 other pieces. It might be just a pawn and a rook or something, just a couple pieces left. They're watching the game and they think, man, there's no way this guy's going to win. He's toast. The other guy has about 10 pieces. He's down to 2 or 3. And before you know it, a couple, he's not sweating. He's, moving his pieces where he wants to. And the next thing you know, that guy with a couple pieces wins. Checkmate. Done. Yeah. And the other opponent looks at it. And this has happened many times in chess. Opponents winning with just a couple pieces. Every day. And just, a casual observer, you think, man, this is a chaos mess in this chess game. I don't even know what's going on here. Yet that one opponent, he knows everything that's going on. He knows exactly what moves are being made. And he's calculating every move. He's anticipating every response by his opponent. And when it looks like there's defeat, he goes checkmate. I think about Christ and the crucifixion. That's Christ. His opponent, the devil, he thinks, oh, I got him. He's going to be crucified. Here's what's going to happen. He's being taken in. And Jesus is saying, no, I got this under control. He's making his moves. He's making everything that he understands, he knows. And he's setting up for victory. And you got to understand, that's what's going on here. Jesus is setting things up for victory. And next week we're going to look at that victory in detail. But today we see this. So number 1 in your outline, and this is what I wanted to give you in detail in a separate piece of paper, but we see prophecy fulfilled. Prophecy fulfilled. There's many prophecies that are brought to our attention throughout the scriptures in these passages of the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And also in John, there's also prophecies that are brought forth. And so let me get to that list here. And again, I apologize. Wanted to have those for you. I will get them to you and get those in your hands so you have them. But one of these prophecies, and you don't have all these scriptures up there, so I'll just read it, all right? You guys can listen intently, and I'll get these so you have them at your fingertips. But one aspect we brought forth, I believe, last week, and that was he was betrayed by a close friend, Judas Iscariot. And the prophecy that mentions this is the prophecy related to David, but Psalm 41:9, yea, my own familiar friend in whom I trusted, which did eat of my bread and hath lifted his heel against me. And this was fulfilled. John 13:18 says, I speak not of you all. I know who I have chosen, but that scripture may be fulfilled. He that eateth bread with me hath lifted up his heel against me. Many times in scriptures, you're going to see that phrase, that scripture may be fulfilled. And whenever there's that statement, there's a reference to the Old Testament. Jesus isn't just making something up. No, he's saying the Old Testament prophesied of this, and here's the fulfillment of it. And that's one of them. Betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. The Old Testament mentions that specifically. In Zechariah chapter 11, verse 12, it says, and I said unto thee, if ye think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they weighed for my price 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said unto me, cast it unto the potter, a good price that I was prized out of them. And I took the 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of the Lord. And so this was fulfilled with Judas, as we know. He goes to the priest, the high priest, and he says, what can you give me? I'll point him out. And they say, I'll give you 30 pieces of silver. They didn't even understand that they were fulfilling scripture. by offering this amount. Jesus talked about this. Third, forsaken by his disciples. We talked about this last week. How he, in the garden, his disciples would forsake him. Well, the Old Testament talked about that. Zechariah 13, verse 7. Awake, O sword, against my shepherd and against the man that is my fellow, saith the Lord of hosts. Smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. And I will turn mine hand upon the little ones. Yep. And that's what happened. The sheep scattered.
What verse was that again?
That's Zechariah 13, verse 7. And again, I'm going to get all this to you.
Okay.
Next Sunday.
But he was silent before his accusers. Remember how Jesus didn't say a word?
Never said a mumbling word.
They tried to get him to, hey, you prophesied this, you did this. They buffeted him in the face with a bag over his head so he couldn't see and say, hey, you're God, you can prophesy. Who hit you? Did he say anything? No.
They were toying with him.
Yeah, they were trying to get him to maybe react.
Or denounce.
Maybe get angry, you know. Have you ever had somebody try and push your buttons?
Yes.
I never had that problem with my kids. They never do.
Oh, you never had that problem.
They never do. Yeah, right. But Isaiah 53 talks about that. It says, I was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearer is dumb, so he openeth not his mouth. And this is what Jesus did. He was falsely accused. Psalm 35:11 says, false witnesses did rise up. They laid to my charge things that I knew not. He was beaten and spit upon. Isaiah 50 talks about this. I gave my back to the smiters and my cheeks to them that plucked off the hair. I hid not my face from shame and spitting. The New Testament talks about all these things. Matthew 26:67. Then did they spit in his face and buffeted him, and others smote him with the palms of their hands. He was mocked and ridiculed. Psalm 22 says, and all they that see me laugh me to scorn. They shoot out the lip, they shake the head, saying he trusted in the Lord that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighteth in him. Well, this happened at the cross.
Well, he was dragging his cross through the crowd.
Even on the cross, It says, and they that passed by reviled, wagging their heads. So as he's hanging there on the cross, they walk by. And what do they say? Thou that destroyest the temple and buildest it in 3 days, save thyself. Yeah. If thou be the Son of God, come down from the cross. Very similar to what was prophesied. When in the prophecy in Psalms it said, let him deliver him, seeing he delighteth in him. This is what was prophesied. The pierced hands and feet was not a coincidence. Psalm 22 says, for dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me, they pierced my hands and my feet. He was crucified with criminals. We know how in Mark 15 talks about how, and with him they crucified two thieves, the one on the right hand, the other on the left. Well, prophecy in Isaiah 53 says, therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And he bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. His garments were divided. They cast lots. It's pretty interesting. It says, they parted my garments among them, and cast lots upon my vesture. Well, what does it say about this? It says how they took the garment, they made 4 parts, to every soldier a part. What did the prophecy say? They part my garments among them. But what's interesting, they said, therefore, this is the New Testament, they said, therefore, among themselves, let us not rend it, talking about the coat, because it was without seam, woven from top throughout. That means it was very valuable to keep it together and not divide it. It didn't have any seams in it. It was all one piece. So what did they say? They said, let us not rend it, but cast lots for it. Wait a minute. What did the Old Testament say? They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. They didn't cast lots for his garments, but for his vesture, his coat, they cast lots for, because they said, we don't want to divide, we don't want to break it, so let's cast lots and see who should get it. the New Testament says that's exactly what happened.
Why did they do that though? Why was that written in
They
their
were bored.
Again, it was prophecy. I think it's prophecy fulfilled about his garments, how they would divide that among themselves. There was value in materials, and clothing was very valuable then, especially royal clothing, and they were trying to mock him with royal
Plus,
clothing.
They knew that he wasn't going to need it anymore.
Yeah, well, they tried to, they were doing it for money, is what they were doing it for. But again, it's just a small aspect of the prophecy that was being fulfilled. How he was given vinegar to drink. Psalm 69 says, they gave me also gall for my meat, and in my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink.
What is gall?
John?
Yeah, what is
Gall for my meat. I should have looked that up specifically. I believe it's
not
salt. Yeah, I'll look it up and I'll let you know.
It's not salt.
But John 19 says, after this, Jesus, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scripture might be fulfilled, saith, I thirst. Now there were set a vessel full of vinegar, and they filled a sponge with vinegar and put it upon hyssop and put it to his mouth. Again, prophecy fulfilled. Here's a good one. No bones were broken in his body.
Yep.
The Bible prophesied in Psalm 34, he keepeth all his bones, not one of them is broken. When they went to the cross to kill him, the priests, the scribes, they said, we don't need to keep the bodies on the cross for Sabbath. Sabbath was right around the corner. So what they were going to do, they were going to break the legs so they would basically suffocate. Because that's how they were able to breathe on the cross.
Yeah.
They made it, that's why they would nail the feet. So to take a breath, they would have to lift themselves up and take a breath, and then they would die. They would end up dying most of the time from suffocation, not being able to lift themselves up anymore.
And their cage goes down over the
yeah, and so to kill them quicker, they just broke their legs, so they would end up dying. Well, this is what the soldiers did. It says, and when they came to Jesus and saw that he was dead already, they brake not his legs. But one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came there out blood and water. And he that saw it bare record, and his record is true, and he knoweth that he saith true, that ye might believe. He was pierced. Well, we just read how they didn't break his legs, but they pierced him. Well, that was prophesied in Zechariah 12. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplication, that they look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for me. And we'll talk a little bit about that piercing here in a moment. But he prayed for his enemies. Talks about that in the Old Testament. How there was darkness over the land.
Yeah.
Amos talks about that. The cry of abandonment. He says in Psalm 22, a prophecy of David, saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me and from the words of my roaring? Well, what did Jesus say on the cross? He said, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is to be interpreted, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? He was buried with the rich. He was given, and Isaiah says, and he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. Well, Joseph of Arimathea would give up his grave. He had a grave that he purchased. Who also was Jesus' disciple. And he goes to Pilate. He begged the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. And he was in a borrowed tomb. He did not resist. There's many prophecies that Jesus fulfilled in the crucifixion. And I want us to understand that. This is not a coincidence. This is not just a death, a random death. No, this is prophecy fulfilled. Jesus, this crucifixion is miraculous, beyond anybody's understanding or comprehension. And they say that the chances of this prophecy being fulfilled is, I think, 1 in 180 billion or something like that. The chances, when you line up all the chances of this lining up and the different hundreds of prophecies, and that's just of the death and resurrection. We also have the prophecy of his birth, a prophecy of how he lived on the earth. There's many prophecies associated to Jesus Christ. And that's what Jesus Christ did for you and I. He fulfilled this prophecy. Imagine someone writing out the details of an execution centuries before it happens, and every detail unfolding exactly as it was written. I mean, it's just unheard of. It's just not natural, because it wasn't. It was miraculous. It was divine appointment by God. That is not a chance. That is God in his power. Number 2, we see power controlled. Power controlled. I want us to see now, I know I went through that briefly and ran through those different prophecies, and again, I'll get those printed out for you. But our next point I want us to focus in now is how power controlled. I used to always say, and there's still a truth to it, but how he suppressed his power. He limited his power. But part of me doesn't think that's true. He controlled his power. When I say limited or suppressed, you think of, he made it to where he could not overcome. No, he could overcome these people anytime he wanted to. He had his power completely. He just controlled the power he had. And I think that's one aspect of this crucifixion that makes it miraculous. He never lost his power, but he chose to control it. John 19, verse 10 says, Then saith Pilate unto him, Speakest thou not unto me? Knowest thou not that I have power to crucify thee and have power to release thee? This is Pilate speaking to Jesus.
Well, he didn't know, did he?
And he says, don't you wonder, because he's again realizing who Jesus is. Pilate is a whole study, and it's an interesting study to do, which we might do one day about him. But he's trying to tell Jesus, why don't you talk? And he says, I have power to crucify thee, and I have power to release thee. Did he? Well, here's Jesus' response in verse 11. Jesus answered, Thou couldst have no power at all against me, except it were given thee from above. Therefore, he that delivered me unto thee hath the greater sin. That's a great truth there, especially nowadays. Remember, there's nothing that's happening in your circumstances that God did not allow. God, people that have power over us or power above us, they don't have it because they're powerful or because of who they are. They only have it because they're allowed to. God is the one who gives it. And that's what Jesus is saying here. You don't have power to crucify me. The only power you have is what is given you from above. And we see letter A, his power was evident. Jesus, his power was evident. And we see that throughout his life as he lived. He calmed storms. Mark 4:39, peace be still. And he calmed the storm. He raised the dead. He called out to Lazarus in John chapter 11, Lazarus, come forth. Do you think Jesus had power? Yeah, and it's pretty evident that he did. I don't think anyone was hesitating, especially the believers in Jesus. What?
Don't forget the water into wine.
Yep, there's many. We can talk about a lot of different ones. But those are two of the ones. I mean, he healed lepers. He healed the blind. He healed the crippled. There's many, many that we can mention. But we see his power was evident. It was seen. It was displayed. This was not something hidden. But his power was also available. Look at Matthew chapter 26. It's a very interesting passage here. When they talk about, taking his life, in verse 53, he says, Thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels? He's like, who do you think can I just pray right now and cry out to my Heavenly Father to send me 12 legions of angels and I should have it?
He could.
Yes, he could. Yeah. There's a song, and I love the song. Maybe we'll sing it sometime. It's in our hymn book, but he could have called 10,000 angels to destroy the world and set him free. That's how the song goes. And I looked up that 12 legions. And it's pretty interesting. Here's some mind-blowing numbers. I'm a number guy, so I like numbers. A legion is a military term, and a legion is approximately 6,000 is one legion. Well, he mentions 12 legions here. 12 legions would be 72,000 angels. 72,000 angels. Now, in 2 Kings chapter 19, verse 35, we have a testament written about an angel who fought for Israel and killed 185,000 Assyrians. One angel did. One angel killed 185,000 Syrians.
That was Kings 1935.
That was 2 Kings 1935, yes. 2 Kings 1935 talks about that. So if you have one angel that can kill 185,000, I calculated this out, that means 72,000 angels can take on 13.2 billion people.
Million or billion?
Billion. Billion. Right now the Earth's population is a little higher than 8 billion. So more than the world's population today. Not back then, but even today. 72,000 angels, no problem. They can take it on. Do you think 72,000 angels could take on everybody that lived at that time of Jesus? Oh yeah. There would be no challenge. There would be no contest. It would be so easy for them to do this. And Jesus, I think he's trying to just make a point that, hey, this is no challenge. If I wanted to be done with these people that are trying to crucify me, he can do it at the snap of a finger. His power was available. And that's what makes this more miraculous, is that he had the power. And his power, letter C, restrained. So his power was available, letter B. And letter C, his power restrained. He stayed, not because he had to, but because he chose to. This wasn't something he he could have been done with this, but he chose to. Hebrews 12:2 says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame. It was a joy in God's mind to go through this because of what he was doing for mankind. He was redeeming mankind. John 10:18, no man taketh it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have the power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This commandment have I received of my Father. No man taketh Jesus' life. He laid it down. Jesus was not powerless. He was purposeful. He was purposeful. Jesus having the ability to destroy, to take over this whole situation is what makes it even more miraculous. Imagine, sometimes someone might go through suffering. They might be put bound. We hear stories, horrible stories, especially in history, of Christians being tortured. We even see in the Bible of some disciples that would go through some pain and suffering. And you can look at some of the history of some of the disciples. Stephen, one of the first martyrs in the New Testament, was stoned to death. Did he have power to take those people out? No. But did Jesus have power?
Yeah.
Yes. It's one thing if somebody wants to torture me and I have no power, they have me bound, and I have to suffer pain and anguish. That's one thing if I have no power. I can't do anything about it. I just have to endure this. But if I have the power to destroy these people, I probably will. If I have the ability, if I have a group of 20 guys coming at me, and I have the ability to handle this situation and take them all out, I would do it. Because I have the ability. Now Jesus, he has the ability. His power is available to him. But yet he says, no, I'm not going to do it. Every time he is buffeted on the face, every time he is whipped with a cat of nine tails, every time he has that thorns crushed into his skull, every moment the excruciating pain as he's hung there on the cross and he's lifting himself up for a breath, And he goes back down and feels the pain of the stretch of the nails in his hands and his feet. In his mind, he thinks, Father, 12,000 legions maybe? But no, he doesn't do it. He says no. And he goes through this for you and I. And that takes us to our last point. We see passion portrayed. Passion portrayed. It was not the nails that killed Jesus. It was not the cross. It was not all the pain and suffering he went through that killed Jesus. It was his choice to give his life. John 19 verse 30. When Jesus therefore had received the vinegar, he said, "It is finished." And the Bible says he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. He didn't have his life taken. He gave it up. He was in control of the whole situation. Every moment of that crucifixion, he was in complete control. And when it was time, and he cried out, "It is finished," he said that because he understood, it's done. I have completed my Father's will. I have done everything I needed to do to accomplish what was due to redeem mankind. So he cries out, "It is finished," and then he gives up the ghost. Letter A under this point, a voluntary death. It was a voluntary death. He gave up his life. No one took it from him. This was not something the soldiers had control of, or any of the high priests. Even the soldier that came by to kill him, break the legs like he did of the other two men that were suffering on the cross. He comes by to Jesus, and what is it? What did we read? Jesus was already dead. That soldier didn't take his life. When they stabbed him in the heart, that didn't take his life. It was a voluntary death. Letter B, a broken heart for sin. A broken heart.
When they stabbed him, they just want to make sure he was
Well, we're going to talk about that here, actually, right on this point. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, "For he hath made him to be sin for us, who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him." Christ became sin for us. You see, Christ, the suffering on the cross that Christ went through was not the nails and the thorns and the buffeting. Yes, it was painful. I'm not saying he didn't feel any of that, but that was not what killed Jesus. It was, he took upon himself the sins of all mankind. Isaiah 53:4, "Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows." He borne our griefs. What does that mean?
He took everything upon himself.
Can we really bear somebody else's griefs?
No.
Not truly.
No.
We can kind of be there for somebody, maybe put an arm around them and help them through a situation, and maybe do something for them, make them a meal, encourage them, but it's hard to bear somebody else's griefs. But Jesus did that for us. He bore our griefs and carried our sorrows. Well, how did he do that? On the cross. Yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. John 19:34, "But one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came out blood and water." Blood and water separating in the body is consistent with severe shock or heart failure or trauma is the situation that was under here. He was already dead, and when someone's dead, the fluid can build up around the heart and around the lungs. And this happens because of severe stress and trauma, that when he was stabbed would come forth both blood and water. Because as we know, when someone is dead, right away the blood clots and it's not flowing. The heart's not pumping anymore. But when they're stabbed, it could hit an artery, hit the heart, the main blood vessel. But because of the pressure that he was under, flowed out, even though he was already dead, flowed out blood and water, proving that he already died. It wasn't the soldier that took his life. This death had already occurred. Jesus gave his life. No soldier took it from him. And letter C, our last subpoint there, is a finished work. A finished work. John 19:30, when Jesus therefore had received the vinegar, he said, "It is finished," and he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. He never said, "I am finished,"
Yeah.
but he said, "It is finished." What is it?
The prophecy.
It is the fulfillment of the payment that must be due for the price of mankind, for the sin of you and I. For our sin that must be paid for, he said it is finished. That is why we can do nothing to earn our salvation. If we ever say, you know what, yes, Jesus Christ died on the cross, but I have to go to church so much, I have to give him the offering, I have to be a good person, I have to fulfill certain things, then we're saying it isn't finished then. Jesus wasn't finished when he died on the cross. We have some requirements to do as well. But no, he says it is finished. The work is done. There's nothing else that needs to be done. So that's why I say salvation, Jesus is not just part of salvation, he is salvation. Salvation is Jesus Christ, and that's why we need to put our faith and trust in him. The payment was complete. The cross did not end his life, he ended his life on the cross. It wasn't the cross that killed him. It was where he chose to end his life. And so in conclusion, we see prophecy fulfilled. We see power under control. But we also see a passion portrayed in his life. All the way from him on the donkey. Today's Palm Sunday. Jesus, a week before his crucifixion, he came in, triumphal entry on the donkey. Another prophecy fulfilled. As he rode upon the colt, and they shouted out Hosanna, and they worshiped God. A week later, he's dying on the cross for you and I. This is what Jesus Christ did for you and I. Just like in a chess game, what looks like loss was actually set up for victory. What looked like Satan had him defeated was set up for victory. Calvary looked like defeat. He was arrested, he was beaten, he was crucified. The crowd thought it is over. The high priest, they probably said, it's done. We don't have to deal with this guy anymore. They went on to with their Passover feast week and their meal and everything, and going back to their rituals and their traditions and thinking, we can get back to life without Jesus. But we know the victory was still coming. And the victory of the resurrection, which we will look at next week, God had already planned every move. God knew exactly what was happening. If Jesus fulfilled the prophecy, just like he did throughout the Bible, can we trust him to fulfill his promise of saving us? Yes. We can put our faith and trust in him, and we can rest in the assurance that he will keep his promise to save us. Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. If he controlled the circumstances of the cross, he had the power to call down 72,000 angels to destroy everybody and get him out of this situation. He had complete control over that, yet he allowed it to happen. Do you think he has control over your circumstances? What's going on in your life? Do you think it's catching him off guard? Oh, I'm sorry, Francine. I didn't know that was going to happen. I'm sorry, Jane. I didn't know you were going to have to go through this situation. No. He understands it all. It's not necessarily mean he wants us to go through it. Sometimes he allows us to go through certain situations because he understands that this might get us on track. It might be what we need. Is it always the most comfortable thing that we need in life to help us in the future? No. I used to, in high school, play football and basketball for my small private school. And there were many, many, many practices that were horrible. And there was a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of running. And it was not enjoyable. But because of that situation, it made me stronger for the game and prepared me for the struggle of the actual game. And we're going to go through situations maybe that aren't comfortable. They're not enjoyable, but God's preparing us. God's maybe wanting to use us for something we don't understand yet. God is in control of the circumstances. If he gave his life for you, will you give your life for him? If he gave his life for you, can you give your life for him? He's not asking us to die for him.
Thank goodness.
Though some people might. There are some Christians who have and some Christians who will be called to die for him. But he's not asking us of that. Romans chapter 12 says that we may be a living sacrifice. That's what he wants from us. He wants us to be a living sacrifice. Yes, they're going to go through some pain. We're going to go through some troubles. There might be some uncomfortable times. But he's just asking us to live with him in mind every day of our life. I hope you will understand that the crucifixion, Calvary, was planned from the beginning, just as he promised throughout the Old Testament.
I never knew that.
It was all planned. And he knew exactly what would happen. And he was in control of the whole situation. And he promised to provide salvation to the world before the foundations of the world. And he provided that for you and I. Let's have a word of prayer. Lord,